in the house.
The pride of Hampton County. By the way, North Carolina and North Carolina State will kick at 3:30 on Saturday on the ACC network. And for those wondering, the Tar Heels are in the postseason as they do have 6 wins. NC State is 5-6. So if they can upend North Carolina at Keenan this weekend, they will get into the postseason as well. And both teams will finish with a 6-6 record in the regular season. But that's not why we have the pride of Hampton County here. Alex Jones joins to talk Carolina ahead of this week's rivalry game, and we'll get into some hoops with him as well. Good morning, Alex. Happy Thanksgiving.
Good morning. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Hope everybody's had a good start to the week here.
Yeah, man.
Well, everybody's hoping to have a better end to the week, that's for sure, on Saturday, a noon kick in the Upstate and Memorial Stadium in the Fake Death Valley, and they're looking for 2 in a row up there. You know what, Alex? I'm going to bring this up now with you because you're a good guy and you can gracefully say the things that I want to say. There's a lot of, I would dare to say, hatred, maybe not that far, but certainly dislike or disdain for a guy named Juice Wells. But if there's any week to celebrate Juice Wells, it is this week. If it wasn't for him, they would not have won the game 2 years ago in the Upstate. So let's all be happy and, dare I say, thankful during Thanksgiving that Juice Wells chose to come to South Carolina.
Yeah, I don't think there are too many South Carolina fans that want to hear that. I'm sure they're thankful for what he did for that Tennessee game, and then really that Clemson game, as you mentioned. He kind of won the game really with 2 big catches. But yeah, I'm sure most South Carolina fans probably don't want to hear too much of that.
That's going to be a hard sell. I mean,
3 big catches. 3 big catches. Yeah. He took 2 to one to the house. He caught 1 on 4th down in the back of the end zone,
right.
And he sealed the ball game. Yeah, he sealed the ball game at the end of it well. Look, so
when Juice wants to play, he's a great player. And there were times in 2022 where, let's just say, the game plan did not. A guy would catch a bunch of passes, and then the next week wouldn't even get targeted or wouldn't even be in the game plan. So that was a little bit of a factor. When they started going to him, he was really good. But if he nicks himself up, he doesn't play through injuries, obviously. If things aren't going well, he's kind of a front runner. And that's played out. Played out at Carolina a little bit. Obviously, last year was a very disappointing ending, and it's played out at Ole Miss. And unfortunately, when you do that, you don't get drafted. So, probably looking back on it, probably should have gone pro after 2022. Yeah,
probably. Yeah. Well, I think we can all certainly agree how it ended at South Carolina. It was not ideal, and he was not a good teammate at all. However, he did win the game for them at Clemson 2 years ago, and if anybody wants to give the win back, they can. But Juice Wells was the reason
I loved it.
They actually won the football game. So I'm going to give him a lot of credit, whether people are pissed or not. I don't really give a damn. Juice Wells was the best wide receiver on that team, and he won the freaking football game for him. So it is what it is.
Well, think about that catch on 4th down, the first touchdown of the game, where Carolina's looks like, man, if they didn't score there, it could have gotten ugly. They were not stopping Clemson at the time, and Spencer found him on a 4th down in the back of the end zone. So, no, I'm thankful for whatever Juice did here. I mean, players make weird decisions now because we're kind of in this new era. Ole Miss fans are hating on him and trashing him, and maybe this will be a lesson to some people. Stay where you're loved and taken care of, rather than chasing a few $1,000 extra dollars.
And talking a bunch of crap.
He will be a part of those data points. Trolling the team that gave you a chance at this level is probably not ideal. That's for sure. But Alex, Carolina rides a 5-game winning streak into the ball game this weekend. Before that, though, tonight we're going to get the CFP rankings. Where do you think they'll land?
I think 14 or 15, somewhere in there. I'm really interested to see what the committee does with Alabama and Ole Miss and where they rank them. I think that's kind of key to where South kind of gets placed. Do they kind of weigh the head-to-head as much in that with, Ole Miss and Alabama having the winner of South Carolina. And if they do, obviously South Carolina's going to be behind them, I think, in that 15, maybe even 16 spot. But, if they kind of value playing well at the end of the season, I think South Carolina could maybe slide into that 14 spot. But I think I'd probably bet money on them being in that 15 spot.
I think they'll split the difference. I don't know which. I think Ole Miss's losses are going to hurt it. But hey, we've been talking about the Vandy loss, Alex, being good for Alabama. Vandy's 6-5, just like Oklahoma is. Kentucky's 4-7.
Mm-hmm.
Florida is 6-5. I don't know, because they dropped LSU below Carolina just because LSU wasn't playing all that well.
And Alabama just did not look good at all in that Oklahoma game against.
Yeah.
Oklahoma, we've seen kind of what they've been all season. Alabama just really never had a chance in that and just didn't look good at all. So really interesting to see where they placed Alabama for the most part.
This Arizona State thing, and I love Arizona State, don't get me wrong, jumping everybody is insane. I don't understand it at all. I mean, I'm like, okay, so they beat BYU. Great. A lot of teams have. But now they're just ahead of everybody else. What the hell? I mean, I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I was surprised to see them jump as high as they did in the AP poll. I don't remember where they got to in the AP poll, but I was surprised at their jump.
Yeah, I don't get that. Maybe they
Clemson. Hey guys, Clemson beat the crap out of the Citadel, and they moved up 5 spots in the AP poll.
That was one of the more questionable
but
for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, but that's, not that the AP poll matters, and we're going to talk to Brad about this coming up at noon, but equally as important for Carolina tonight, where they land, is where Clemson lands. Like, you want the Tigers ranked as high as they can possibly be ranked going into the matchup this weekend. It's a big deal when it comes to the resume stuff, Alex.
Yeah, South Carolina obviously has to win this game this weekend to have a chance at the playoff, and the higher Clemson's ranked, the better that win, if they do win, looks. So, if you're a South Carolina fan, you probably, don't want to say it, but I think you want Clemson to be as highly ranked as they can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to your point, JC, by the way, Arizona State, the last couple of weeks, beating 16th ranked Kansas State and 14th ranked BYU, does that warrant them moving all the way, like almost near the top 10? I don't think so, but certainly some folks do.
I think they just wanted to put a Big 12 team up there, and just for poops and giggles. I was born in Arizona, Jerry. I went to Arizona State. I want Arizona dollars. I don't know. All this Arizona State talk has made me remember that famous line from Jerry Maguire, which was probably a movie released before you were born, Alex, which makes me feel old, very old. You complete me.
Really old.
Anyway, so
that's
also
a movie. Alex, that's a movie line, just so you know.
Yeah, it's a movie. That's from the same movie, Jerry Maguire. If you go back and watch it, you complete me. That's the famous. That's Tom Cruise, Renee Zellweger, Cuba Gooding Jr. at the top of his career, at the pinnacle of his career, probably the best role he's ever played. Anyway, all right, that's beside the point. We're going to talk basketball for a little bit, because I'd like to hear what Alex has to say.
We're going to get there.
Okay,
we're going to get there. Don't worry.
You're driving this bus,
Carolina play this weekend.
Yeah, you're driving this.
Don't
bus,
worry.
dude.
We got Alex for some time. Look, Alex, when you look at the game this weekend, obviously it's. I was on a show yesterday and was asked about, the matchup, basically, offense, defense, both sides, whatever it is. And we've seen enough of Clemson this year, to be able to take the conversation back 11, 12, 13 years when Carolina was in the middle of that 5-game winning streak against those guys, and they were beating them on the lines of scrimmage. South Carolina, obviously, on the defensive line this year has been, for the most part, outstanding. You could maybe say a couple of boo-boos in the last couple of weeks with some things here and there, but for the most part, they have just been outstanding. The offensive line has come around, but you could also argue the last couple of weeks they've had a couple of issues too that they need to get cleaned up heading into the ball game this weekend. What do you know about the line of scrimmage matchup against the Tigers coming up on Saturday?
Yeah, Clemson's offensive line's banged up. Obviously they have a few players who are out for the season. So I think going into the matchup, you like South Carolina's chances to create some havoc plays with, I think you really like South Carolina's defensive line in any matchup that they're going to go against with how well they're playing. But, I'm interested to see that just because of they're going to have have some guys in there who haven't been playing the whole season. And, they're banged up and they may have a couple guys back. But, South Carolina's defensive line has gone up against the best in the country so far and they've continued to get pressure. So I think they got chances there to continue doing that. And that's going to be key going up against Cade Klubnik. And, you also got to contain him too because he can make plays with his legs as well. And on the other side, I think, Clemson's defensive line is maybe not quite up to standard as they have been in the recent past, but they're still very good. They got some really good guys. And, you think of TJ Parker coming off the edge. He's been a problem this year. He's got 9 sacks, I think. And then, I think when you think about it, South Carolina's offensive line has shown improvement. And I think they have had a little bit of issues here, the past few weeks. But, Lenore Sellers, for the most part, when they had those issues, have gotten them out of it. So, I think, the run game needs to get going, and that's going to be a lot on, Lenore Sellers and rocking the offensive line because, if the run game can get going, that's going to help open up the passing game against this Clemson defense. And, it's going to be fun to watch, because that line of scrimmage battle, it could come down to that at the end of the game. Who wins that line of scrimmage may decide who wins the game.
Yeah, Clemson still got players at linebacker. They get Woody Woodaz back this week, according to David Hood. Marcus Tate is trending towards playing. He's an offensive lineman. Tristan Lee will be back. He's kind of a guy they moved out there. Yeah, I mean, they have it. I mean, they've had some problems up front on offense before they had injuries. I thought they were playing. Matt Luke had them playing pretty good. It's still tough against Carolina. I think if you're South Carolina's offense, a challenge is going to be blocking that front 7, not just the 4, but the 7. You have guys like Peter Woods up there. DeMonte Capehart, I think, is out. And Hood also reported, from what I understand, they may play some 3-3-5 with some odd front against the Gamecocks. A lot of people think that gives you an advantage if you got 4 blocking 3, but it doesn't because of run fits, and they're very good at linebacker. And R.J. Mickens, their safety, will be back too. He was a highly rated guy. I mean, they got some players. If you look at their defense, I don't know what's happened this year, Alex. Have you watched? How much Clemson football have you watched? Because I always say Gamecocks watch more Clemson than any other team, but this year it's been weird because they haven't had a lot of big games. And a lot of their games have been at the same time as Carolina. So I'll admit I haven't watched as much of them this year as maybe I normally do. What's your take?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It seems like they've been playing in the same time slot here for most of the season. But I think the biggest thing defensively that surprised me with Clemson is the run defense. They've had some real issues there. Think about what Louisville did in that game. They had a lot of success on the ground, and even the Citadel had a bunch of yards on the ground, and obviously some of that may have come in garbage time. But they haven't been quite up to standards in their run defense, and I think that with South Carolina, the way they've been running the ball for a majority of the season, that could be an area that South Carolina could exploit.
Citadel though still runs. They don't get under center and do it, but they run it's almost like a flex bone out of the shotgun kind of thing. They got a good coach. Maurice Drayton used to coach for the Packers. He has a real good reputation around the state. Citadel's done a good job this year, but a lot of their media is talking about 288 yards. They were surprised they gave up that many. Isaac Brown, of course, went for 150, but they shut Pitt down on the ground. Pitt threw for 350 with their backup quarterback. This is why I can't get a beat on it, because it's like, all right, so this defense got all these studs, right? They're supposed to be one of the best fronts in the country this year. They have not played that way consistently. Shut Georgia down in the first half. I watched that game. I watched all that game. I thought, well, that's about like what I expected. But if they go to Virginia Tech, which has a dual threat quarterback like Carolina, and completely shut them down, especially in the second half, that Virginia Tech went like nowhere. I think 41 yards rushing, something like that. Yet Louisville lit them up on the ground. The Citadel got that. So it's hard. This Clemson team is like a mystery at 9-2. What scares me about them, Alex, is teams that learn how to win games in different manners and different ways whether it's 59-35 or whether it's 20-17. They don't know much. They're not good at anything, but they know how to win. And that kind of scares you, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Clemson's been, Dabo and Clemson's been in a bunch of big games, and they know how to win. They've proven that. And, you're right. I think they've kind of found ways to win this year when they haven't maybe put a complete performance together all season, but they so far have just found ways to win. And, I think that's something that can give you a little bit of worry in this game for South Carolina, just because also it's at home too. And that's obviously going to give you an advantage there. But, South Carolina's going to have to play a really good game in this one to find a way to win, especially going into Memorial Stadium.
All right, let me give you the list of teams that the Tigers have played this year, Alex. They of course opened with Georgia and were beaten 34-3. They beat App State, they beat NC State, and gave up 35 points in that game. They beat Stanford, they beat Florida State, they beat Wake Forest, Virginia. They gave up 31 there. Gave up 33 to Louisville and lost. They next went to Blacksburg and held the Hokies to 14 and won that game. Beat Pitt 24-20, and then last week 51-14 over the Citadel. With the way that the Carolina offense has been playing in the last month, where would you place the Gamecocks amongst that list of teams that the Clemson defense has had to defend this season?
I think with the way South Carolina's played, probably past Oklahoma from that point on, it's going to be up there again, one of the better offenses that Clemson's going to have to face. And I think the factor of having Lenora Sellers playing, some of the best ball in the country right now at quarterback, that's also adds another part to it, especially with this run game too. With Clemson's just going to have a lot they're going to have to account for on offense with the way Raheem Sanders has been running the ball. Lenore's have been making a whole bunch of plays through the air, and I think the biggest thing that's helped Lenora so far, or even recently, has been his biggest improvements on the deep ball. He's connected with Nick Harper and Dale Von Campbell on those plays, and that's something that's going to add even more. That not only Clemson but teams in the future are going to have to account for, because it's really opening up that defense, and it's going to be interesting to see how they play that, because Nick Harper is really kind of coming to his own, and Dale Von Campbell they continue to need receivers to rise up, and Dale Von Campbell has risen to the occasion. So I think it's going to be a big challenge for it's going to be a challenge all around. And I think Carolina's offense has really kind of flourished here recently.
I know Tony put out a report on this. I think one of the huge components to this game for Carolina football is the health of Josh Simon. Tony Morrell, of course, your colleague with the Big Spur, has reported that he is heard or been told that we expect to see Josh Simon on the field on Saturday. Can you add to that, and can you add any other injury news? And with the caveat, in case people are wondering, there will be no availability report this week because this is not a league game. So Shane Beamer will not be putting out an injury report before the game. But what are you hearing about Josh and others?
Yeah, I think you expect Josh Simon to go. He's one who did see him in a boot pregame during Wofford, walking around during warmups. But I think a lot of that is just precautionary. You see that a lot these days with the boot. It's just, to help out. And I think he's going to play. And he's a guy who's, coming into his last season, in-state kid who's, coming into a rivalry game. He's going to play, I think. And, I think that's a big step for South Carolina because they're going to need Josh Simon. He adds just a whole nother element to that offense, what he can do and the way he's performed, this season. So, injury-wise, I think, I expect Josh Simon to play, and we'll see what Shane Beamer has to say here later today, how much we get. I think at that tight end spot, we know Brady Hunt's not going to be available. He's out for, the rest of the regular season. But, what's Michael Smith's status? And I think that's because tight ends in that Wofford game, they had to use Xavier Shivers as that extra tight end, kind of extra tackle, and that's a spot that, has kind of gotten banged up here recently, but I think you can at least expect to get Josh Simon back.
When Shivers ran on the field the other day, he was in an 88 uniform, and it totally caught me off guard. I turned and looked at my cousin. I said, who the hell is 88? I know every player on this roster. I don't know who this guy is.
I kind of thought they brought Justice Cunningham back. I saw it. It kind of looks like Justice Cunningham came back.
Yeah, that one through me for a loop, too. I was like, who is this? Where's my radio
tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was quite the surprise. I'll be interested to see if they actually maybe, I don't know, do anything off of that. Who knows? You might have some sort of a goal line package or something.
Yeah, Xavier Shivers, when he's come in and played at tackle, he's played really well so far. And, I can't remember what game that was he came in and played, but, he showed flashes and continued to, improve heading into his second season. And, he looked good. Obviously, you'll take a big step in competition from Wofford to Clemson, but, I think that kind of, at the very least, that gives maybe a little bit for Clemson that has to prepare for just in case South Carolina can throw that out there.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt about that.
I wouldn't be throwing the ball to Shivers and
no, I wasn't saying that. No.
Fullback dive.
Yeah, not well. If you're up 21, something like that, what the hell? But I just don't know. Put Tonka in there and throw it to him.
Yeah,
I trust that one.
Yeah, Tonka.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If you want to get fancy,
one of the great things, Alex, that Shane Beamer has done. Of course, Will did a pretty good job with it too, and Coach Spurrier back in his prime. JC talks about this all the time. It's South Carolina. You win with the guys that come from this state. The more players you have from the Palmetto State, generally the more football games that you'll find a way to get out there and win. Clemson has been getting beat on the recruiting trail by Carolina. They do recruit nationally. Hat tip to them. But, have you heard from any of the players in the last couple of weeks? I'm sure more of that will be today and tomorrow. Just especially some of the seniors, guys like O'Donnell Fortune and others who won't be back. Just what this game could mean to them, being the first group in a long time to get a couple of wins under their belt against that team in the upstate.
Yeah, obviously, with how many in-state kids South Carolina has, this game means a lot to those guys. And, kind of mentioned Josh Simon, guy who wasn't here for that Clemson game 2 years ago, but, he's a guy who knows about this rivalry and knows how important the game is. And, I'm sure they're, having to talk about, blocking out all the extra noise about the playoff talk. But, these guys are going to be focused in on a rivalry match that means a lot to the state. And you think of guys like O'Donnell Fortune, as you mentioned, who was part of that game 2 years ago. And it's a lot of older veteran players on this team. Alex Huntley, who are from the state, who can kind of, to these younger players who, either guys who are in-state guys, or maybe out-of-state guys, can just let these guys know just how much this rivalry game means to the state and how focused they have to be this week to prepare for it.
Is Shane Beamer saying all the right things publicly, but behind the scenes, what have you learned about how he handles this game? Alex, I'm not sure if you remember any of this or not, but when Coach Spurrier came to South Carolina in 2005, I think even Coach Holtz did some of it too. They took all this Clemson stuff down. The clock on the wall that counted down to the game and beat Clemson signs and all this crap that was hanging all over the place, and kind of wanted to remind everybody, we got to play a bunch of games before we get to that one. And they treated it just like any other game. And of course, that ended up working out for Coach Spurrier. He won a bunch of games against the Tigers. What have you learned about how Shane Beamer approaches this week with his football team?
I think they really treated just like any other game. Like they obviously, like I said, they know the importance of it, but you can't, I think they've kind of talked about how you can't put a whole bunch of emphasis on it during the week where it kind of drains the players mentally from having to think about, the pressure or maybe of this game. So I think, you kind of mentioned the clock and stuff that they used to have. I think they kind of treat it just like any other game, knowing the importance of it. But, it's just one of these games that South Carolina has to play. And, they just kind of, maybe they'll have emphasis on it, but they maybe just don't mention it every day that, just put extra, because it feels like it could add extra pressure if you just continue to mention the importance of it.
Yeah, you don't want to put anybody on a pedestal because then you don't play well.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that 100%. All right, most important question of the day, and then we'll move on to hoops because I know JC has been dribbling his basketball around his house wanting to talk to you about this. Do you have a good set of long johns, Alex? Because it's going to be cold as crap on Saturday. They've got the high at 50. It ain't gonna get there till after the game. So don't be hoping for 50 degrees because you ain't gonna see that in the morning.
And it's not like Williams-Brice, which is a closed press box. It's an open air press box in Clemson. So it's gonna be a little chilly. I'm trying to think back to previous games how cold it's been. I feel like this is gonna be one that it's been a little while since it's been this chilly for a game.
Mm-hmm. Well, pack a lunch and some Long Johns and a beanie, and we certainly look forward to the coverage throughout the rest of the week. All right, JC, go ahead. Let it rip, man. Dribble that thing between your legs. Go for it.
I call it the squeaky shoes game because my dog probably thinks that, because 2 years ago, I'll yell at the TV more in basketball than football because it just frustrates me to watch sometimes. And so my dog would, he'd hear the squeaky shoes on the TV and get up and leave the room before I'd even start yelling. I didn't yell a whole lot last year. Hadn't yelled a whole lot this year. But, I think it's clear South Carolina's got better athletes on their team this season. But, man, it's a struggle to play basketball. Yeah, and look, some people are going to mention losing to Sean Miller. Whatever. Who cares? Xavier's a good basketball program. That's not something for Lamont Paris to have to prove or anything, because guess what? Sean Miller was never taking the job. I've been concerned. I don't want to overreact. It's a long season. It's not an undefeated, but this team goes through bad stretches. And last night, start of the second half, after playing, I thought their best half of the year against a quality team. What's your take on basketball so far?
So just starting with that Xavier game last night, I thought you mentioned their best half of basketball. Matt Anderson and I were kind of texting back and forth about this, and I thought defensively they started the game the way Lamont Paris wants them to play defensively. Coming into the game, Xavier was a team that shot the ball really well from three, and they kind of did a pretty good job. Xavier did have some open looks that they missed, but I thought the defense started off really well. The issue they ran into last night was rebounding. Xavier, I can't remember how many offensive rebounds they had, but they continued to get second chance opportunities and were making the most of that. And South Carolina still had a lead at that point at halftime, even with those offensive rebounds, but it could have been they could have extended that lead if they just got into rebounds. And I think a lot of that went into some foul trouble they got into early with Colin Murray-Bowles and Nick Pringle. When you have those two out, that's going to hurt your rebounding a little bit, obviously. But at the end of the day, they just 3-point shooting hasn't quite come around to be consistent yet. I think I got the stats already, 4 of 17, and that kind of evened out a little bit with the way Xavier shot the ball because they were only 4 of 18. But one of the stats, they out rebounded 41-31, and you just against a top 25 team, you're not going to win that way. And also the other stat that I noticed, they had 12 turnovers, and Xavier turned that into 20 points last night, and that's just a stat that's going to kill you every game. And there's still a lot that they're having to work on and clean up, but there's 6 games in, and they're still just trying to figure some of these things out. And I think the biggest thing is just 3-point shooting for one thing. That's just been a big struggle this year, and they've got some things to clean up here. And I think going up against Virginia Tech, Virginia Tech has had its own struggles here, and they're facing off lost to Jacksonville before heading to Fort Myers, and then lost to Michigan. And that I think that's a good matchup for South Carolina. I think they have some opportunities there, and they need to find a way to get a win here in Fort Myers. We're heading back to here to kind of round out the non-conference slate with some games, and then the Clemson game.
Yeah, you don't want to get in a hole, and you got to go to Boston College next week too in the ACC Challenge. That's not on the road in college basketball. It's always a 50-50 proposition. I just the shot selection's bad. I think you got a lot of guys trying to do too much. Even a guy like Jacoby Wright, who's been here for a while. I think he's an excellent part of the team and a valuable part of the team. I don't think he can take over a game, though, and at times it seems like he's trying to. I don't think there's a whole lot of feel for momentum, like when not to take a stupid shot and when not to throw the ball to the other team. Like they got a rebound last night and just turn around, throw it to the other guy, 3-point play. Yeah, they could have. They could have. They could have extended the lead at that point, and at that point, it's a 10-point game at half instead of 5. And look, a lot of times basketball teams they don't get off they get off starts like this, and then they gel, and it's fine. I do think they have good players. I think the athletes on this team are better than last year. It's pretty clear. Yeah, they're just not all playing together. They're just not. I don't know. There's just something. And look, Derek Scott's right. You shouldn't expect this group to come out and play like last year's group. Every team is different. But I do expect them to run an offense and not stand around like they do. And I do expect them to take smarter shots. And you're right. 3-point shooting and rebounding has been very disappointing. I do think yesterday, with all the offensive boards in the first half against Xavier, some of that, Alex, watching the game, was just the ball bounced right to the long rebounds.
Long rebounds.
It wasn't like against North Florida. It was effort. And I think that's what's kind of got me concerned too. Had Carolina just lost to Indiana and lost to Xavier and took care of business against North Florida, I'd be like, oh, they're right on schedule. But that loss, and I think it's because we're all paranoid because we've seen this movie before with the stupid net.
Yeah,
they consider North Florida like a loss in March. And I still contend we start college basketball way too early. But that's what's killing it right now because it's like, man, if they don't make that up with a quality win at some point, the non-conference is going to be worthless. And then you got to go into a brutal SEC, which, hey, 13-5 last year. So who knows? Who on the team can step up and fill that scoring or 3-point role? Is it Cam Scott that just needs to kind of get better? Is it Arden Conyers maybe off the bench? Is it who is it in your opinion? Is it Miles Studi? Who is it?
I think they need. I think it's going to be. It's actually going to be one player. They need a little bit more from probably 3 or 4 players. I think you could throw. I mean, Jacoby Wright's been pretty good here to start the season. I think he's one of those guys you can trust from behind the 3-point line. Miles Studi's had a little bit of a rough start shooting the ball. But we've seen him when he gets going, he can get going. And with Cam Scott, he's a true freshman. He's having to adapt to the speed of the game. And I think he's one that you don't have to worry about him. He's going to continue to come along. And I thought he did have some moments last night in that game. I think, Zach Davis has had a little bit of a slow start offensively too. The 3-point shot just really hasn't gotten going for him either. And what we saw from him last year, he was really good at attacking the basket. I'm not sure we've seen enough of that so far from him. I think he's, trying to maybe put too much of an emphasis on that 3-point shot. And I think with him, it's just get back to what you're doing last year in that role because he was really good in that role last year that he had.
Which is mind-blowing. I know they worked on it. I know he wants to be a good 3-point shooter, and I love Zach.
Yeah.
But he ain't playing defense, and he ain't going to the basket, and he's just out there. I mean, and honestly, Pringle's not playing defense, all the time. So I don't know what to think. Maybe it's just a bad phase. All basketball teams go through it. Sometimes you start bad. So who knows? I don't want to get too upset about it. I'm just like, it's frustrating to watch because I do think these guys have potential.
Right. Yeah, the potential's there, and we've seen it. And then kind of going back to your point with that North Florida loss, you could deal with the Xavier and Indiana loss. I mean, that's 2 top 25 teams that you played away from home that you fell to. But that North Florida game, as JC, you mentioned, we've seen this in previous years. That North Florida game is going to hang with them for the rest of the year. I mean, if South Carolina's in the tournament talk towards the end of the season, and you see all the people talking about South Carolina, that North Florida loss is going to be on the graphic somewhere. And it's just I don't like how much, the net and all that kind of depends on or relies on a loss like that. Because you think back last year, South Carolina didn't lose to Charleston Southern, but that 3 or 4 point win they had over Charleston Southern, it kept it dropped them in the net and, hung with them for the rest of the year. So that's a topic for a whole nother day on the net.
Yeah.
And all that. But
it's football season still. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Alex.
Well, one of the things that they need to do too, Alex, is when you get last night, there were a couple of times, and we got to let you go because we got to get to a break, but they had a couple of times here where, all right, the game's a little bit in flux, a little bit in transition. Who's going to take over and lead you through these moments? And Talon Cooper was not walking through that door. They've got to find that player who can orchestrate what's next for this Carolina basketball team when they hit those moments, because they're going to hit a lot of them this year. I just don't think that they've got that guy yet. But Lamont Paris has proven he can figure it out. So we'll see what happens. They got Virginia Tech tomorrow night at 6:00. And as you pointed out, they probably need to win that ball game. That will be airing on Fox Sports 1. Thanksgiving Eve basketball on Fox Sports 1.
Yeah, and by the way, Fox Sports 1, please do better with whoever the intern is that's updating the score. What a moron. You have one job. It's like, 5 times last night they would give baskets to the other team. Carolina had 17 points for like 7 minutes. They didn't update it. It's bad enough you have to sit there and listen to your candy ass Xavier fan announcers because that's all they were. But I mean, come on, man, just give me the score. That's all I ask. I shouldn't have to get it off the CBS Sports app if I'm watching your network. Blech.
Well, I can make your life a lot easier. You mute the TV and you listen to Derek Scott on the Gamecock Sports Network.
That doesn't help me with the graphics. Do they have graphics?
Yeah, but you said
Derek Scott coming to hologram with the
Candy
score?
ass Xavier announcers don't listen.
Oh
to them.
yeah, well, that's fine with those guys. I mean, yeah, but it was the score. It was because it's an intern sitting in there doing. They just hire cheap people to do that. You have one job.
Yeah.
You want to work in sports TV. Get the score right. That's fundamental. So whoever incompetence anyway.
Alex,
I'm sorry.
thank you so much, man. Great to see you. Happy Thanksgiving. Safe travels to the upstate. Stay warm, and hopefully you get to cover the second consecutive victory in Memorial Stadium for Carolina football.
Awesome. Happy Thanksgiving to you guys and everybody listening. Have a great week.
Have a good. Hey, what you got? What's your favorite side, real quick? Thanksgiving.
Oh, gotta go mac and cheese.
Mac and cheese. Woo! All
I
right.
keep it simple, but I could fill a plate up with mac and cheese, and I'd be okay with it.
Oh, hey, remind me to ask our audience of an important mac and cheese question at some point today, Jamie.